Nevertheless, here we are again with what do we call this, Graham?
Let's call this, thank God, thank heavens, it's the weekend nearly, almost there. I think that's the full title, the Sunday title.
Yeah, where we go from theme of the week to Graham's team of the week. And I ask him a question about every single game that we played across this weekend. Theme of the week, Graham, is sort of the hangover of the Classico, the last word on the Classico, the loose ends, anything that comes to mind, having sure you've rewatched the game, you've seen all the shows and the front pages. I know you did the review of the front pages on Tuesday. And I wanted to ask you two questions in particular.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a time machine in your hands, you flick. Which team do you pick, knowing what was going to happen for the Clasico? And also, what the hell did Real Madrid do with Vinny? He's got 2 years left on his contract.
The first thing to say is that some of those who follow us might not know that Tony Cross, in his own podcast, has said what a ridiculous idea it was not playing Araujo. Why did Eric Garcia start ahead of him? He also had a right pop-up Barcelona for letting Inigo Martinez go, which, Tony, is not new material. Those of us who can read a football game and can understand the value of having a proper left-footed centre-half, which Barcelona don't have at the moment, yeah, I think that's correct news, but old news. I don't know if I agree with Tony Cross about one of Flick's time machine choices would be to go back and pick Araujo. Maybe at right back, maybe, because Koundé had his arse handed to him. But Eric Garcia, I think played really well. So is Araujo bigger and more physical? Yes, but it's funny how Tony Cross, when I'm using him to answer your question, Pete, because it's interesting when a classical legend hones in and points at something and said, this was wrong. This was a problem in the opposition. So you can go back to the ancient saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I think the drive in that saying is that with absence, you forget the flaws, you forget the irritants. And in a game where Barcelona lost 2-1 and Cross has gone to Eric Garcia as the error, one, Garcia played well. Two, Araujo might grow in reputation because he came on the previous week and scored the winner. He very nearly won a penalty against Dani Carvajal. There are some people who would say that there was a penalty committed, blah, blah, blah. But as a central defender, he's pretty flawed in terms of judgment, in terms of the defensive line. So who's to say if Flick uses his time machine and goes back and picks Ronald Araujo at centre-back that Mbappe isn't onside 6 more times, and suddenly the score really is 5-1. A place for Araujo in the team, I accept that is now an increasingly compelling argument. I think it's for Koundé, who needs to be rested. He needs to be told your standards have slipped, physically, athletically, whether that's imposed on you by the rotten schedule they all go through, or whether you've missed a gear in terms of personal intensity. I'm too far away from it to be sure. I don't know if you have a firm view on that. But the time machine would be used, I think, to say, number one, a big argument for, if not Araujo from the start, then Araujo at right back sooner for Koundé. Secondly, you've deliberately put me in the position where people can mock us for being Monday morning quarterbacks, as they say. Every play is easier on the Monday morning. But the evidence was that against Olympiacos, I think, and maybe even against Girona, Pedri was taken off early. Now, Pedri not only, in trying to drag his team to an equaliser, got himself sent off the first time in his career. He's come away injured. The first diagnosis was, yeah, not a big problem, a month, which includes nearly 2 weeks of an international break, therefore fine. Now, the potential bill has gone up. It's the filtration, not the fact, is that this could be a couple of months that Pedri is missing for. So, both taking into account the way in which Pedri was at his limit and might well have been second yellow carded earlier on, was correctly second yellow carded for the first time in his career. Flick's time machine, and I'm refining, pretty delicately, I think probably includes only Araujo for Koundé at right back at some time, whether it's at the beginning or during the game, as you can see Koundé puffing and panting and going, please take me off. Pedri probably taken off sooner, and an acceptance that although he's Barcelona's best player, with the booking, having escaped one, probably make sure he doesn't get sent off, and maybe you avoid the injury. And substitutes at an earlier stage where some of the younger ones are trusted Guardiola style, because Barcelona were second best, not just athletically, but in terms of sharpness. And I think Flick, if you're only honing in on that game and that weekend rather than some of the errors which have built up over the season, those are the things I guess he would want to do.
Mm-hmm. And Vinny?
And Vinicius, you mentioned Vinicius. Lead with your what? Why do you
Well,
rate
he's got
Vinicius?
2 years left, hasn't he? Or it'll be 1 year at the end of this season. I mean, do they sit down? They're not going to sit down with him until the end of the season. That's the word that's coming out of the club. Is that a mistake? Do you absolutely, under no circumstances, let him go, or is
I think he's poured gasoline on the flames in that it's a really, really weird extra chapter in this farrago where I have perpetually been either a supporter of Vinicius or somebody who will twist the kaleidoscope and see it from a slightly more generous point of view. He was utterly in the. I think it wasn't indefensible. I thought it was really extreme tactics by Alonso to say we will get players on who will hold this score and might win a ball and break for 3-1, rather than say those lot out there are on their knees. They're reaching, they're stretching, they are stretched. Vinicius stays on because he will give us the third and fourth creatively or scoring it himself. Alonso went, I remember Mourinho, you've talked about me having mentioned this already. My view is they went, we will pack the area in front of Barcelona. We will beat them to headers. We will beat them to second balls. We will intercept their passes, and we will get workers on to try and make sure this is hard for Barcelona rather than going for the throat. That's entirely within a coach's tactics book. But I could understand Vinicius being pissed off because in his head, apart from all the other ego problems that he's got about infamy, they've all got it, infamy, he thinks this game is mine. I've got Koundé on a platter. And therefore, initial anger, fine, but his behaviour subsequently completely wrong. And then he issues an apology. Did you enjoy it? Would you feel, if Pete Jensen were the coach of Madrid, would you feel apologised to?
Well, basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, is I've let myself down, I've let the school down, I've let the other students down. He's forgot the headmaster.
But fuck the headmaster.
Not mentioned Xavi. It's so deliberate, or at least it looks deliberate, that he's not mentioned Xabi Alonso in the I'm sorry.
There's no quick. I'd veer away from looks deliberate. Well, what is deliberate is that. Fuck you. So Madrid have got a massive problem in coming to a decision now. This is broken because you'd imagine that they've invested in Xabi Alonso for, a long time, not just a good time.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to repair relationships like that, and there are very few players on the planet like Vinicius. So I think you take a long time to decide. Portcullis is down. It's time to say goodbye. I think you take a long time, but once you decide that, you make all your choices in relation to that. The market will be waiting. Do we have a bargain basement, Vinicius? I've seen people writing, because he's so angry at Madrid, Barcelona should come in and complete the signing of Vinicius. Just one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen, albeit that Vinicius was on the verge of joining Football Club Barcelona. And Gerard Piqué phoned him to welcome him to the dressing room and so on and so forth. That ain't happening. That ain't happening. A deeply complicated subject, even once you decide, yeah, he's broken everything, he's going. The clever thing, particularly in the Champions League now, and they're going back to Anfield where Vinicius gave one of the great performances of his career, not good, is come to a conclusion at the club level, we're selling. But keep him on the boil. Keep him playing well. It's a situation that I wouldn't welcome having on my desk.